So now it was going to rain. All that water that he had above the firmament, that was coming down too. And there was water on both sides. There was nowhere for people to escape. He was doing what he said he was going to do. He was judging the earth. In verse 12, and the rain was upon the earth 40 days and 40 nights. So, it didn't just happen right away. When God flooded the earth, there was probably a few days yet where the water was rising and rising and rising. People probably realized something pretty serious was happening here, that it wasn't just an everyday kind of water event. It wasn't like a little evening at the splash pad. This was something significant that was happening. So in verse 13, in the selfsame day, entered Noah and Shem and Ham and Japheth, the sons of Noah, and Noah's wife, and the 3 wives of the sons with him into the ark. They and every beast after his kind, and all the cattle after their kind, and every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth after his kind, and every fowl after his kind, every bird of every sort. I think God missed something. Do you think it's possible God missed something? Do you know what I realized? I don't think God brought any fish into the ark. What were going to happen to all the fish? Were they going to die in the flood? No? Well, how were they going to be okay if they weren't in the ark? Oh, that's right. They could swim. That's right. I guess the fish weren't too affected. I guess maybe they enjoyed the flood. They probably got a lot of extra space to swim around in, eh? But, Noah didn't need to bring any fish into the ark. Verse 15, and they went in unto Noah into the ark, two and two of all flesh, wherein is the breath of life. And they that went in, male and female of all flesh, as God had commanded him. And the Lord shut him in. Isn't that neat? Do you know, it's kind of like, just like today. A lot of people want to work really hard for their salvation. They want to make sure they do righteous things, and they want to make sure that they do everything they can to measure up in God's eyes. And that if they do that, then God will keep them safe. But that's not how God works. Do you know how God works? He offered us Jesus Christ, and when we're in him, then he's the one who seals us. He's the one who keeps us safe. It's a work of Jesus Christ, just like Dan was saying earlier. It's a miraculous work of God that keeps us safe and secure in Jesus Christ. And when Noah got in the ark, he wasn't the one who shut the door and sealed himself in. Do you know who sealed him in? It was God. And the Lord shut him in. When Noah was in there with all the animals and with his family and everyone was safe, God shut him in. And it was God who was keeping him safe from this judgment. Verse 17, and the flood was 40 days upon the earth, and the waters increased and bare up the ark, and it was lifted above the earth. Noah didn't even build the ark in water. He built it on dry land. And the people probably thought he was a lunatic building a huge boat like that when there was no water around. But when the water started rising, when they were coming up and up and up and up, well, the ark lifted above the earth, and that's where he was safe. Now, it says that the waters were increased. So they were coming up and up and up. And eventually they covered all the high hills. Now, what would you do if you were one of the animals or one of the people that was running around there still when the water was coming up and you looked around and you saw a high hill? What would you do? Yeah? Yeah, I think so too. All those high hills that eventually were covered, they didn't know that they were going to be covered. All those people and all those critters, God was going to judge them, and Noah knew their end for sure, but they probably didn't completely understand what their end was. And they were probably climbing to the hill. They were probably looking for any place they could go to stay above the water. And the water kept coming up and coming up and coming up. And God fulfilled what he said he was going to do because they were wicked. It's sad when we think about it that those people died, but they died because they were in their unrighteousness. They were in their wickedness, and they loved their wickedness more than they wanted to repent and believe God. And God judged them. And even though they were trying to find safety in high hills and anything else, there was no safe place because they did not obey God, because they didn't want to trust him, and they weren't shut in the ark. They weren't shut in by God. And they wanted to trust themselves, and they ended up in the water. And it's a sad thing, but that's how it happened. Verse 18, and the waters prevailed and were increased greatly upon the earth, and the ark went upon the face of the waters. And the waters prevailed exceedingly upon the earth, and all the high hills that were under the whole heaven were covered. Every one, every high hill, every mountain, it was all covered by water. 15 cubits upward did the water prevail, and the mountains were covered. So, you know how big a cubit is? That's right, you're a smart young man. It's about from here to here, about the size of, for an average man, that would be what they'd measure a cubit. So it's about 1.5 feet. So there was 15 from here to here. So you could just do this 15 times. And then you find the highest hill on the earth, and it was this 15 times. That's how high the water was above it. So there was a lot of water on the earth. But he tells us every hill was covered. There was no place left where people could go. It was all covered by water. Verse 21, and all flesh died that moved upon the earth, both of fowl and of cattle and of beast and of every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth, and every man. All in whose nostrils was the breath of life, of all that was in the dry land died. It was every single one. If you weren't on the ark, there was nobody safe. All the plants, everything that God had made on the dry land, it all died. The judgment covered everything. Verse 23, and every living substance was destroyed, which was on the face of the ground. Maybe I read that already. Excuse me if I did. Verse 24, and the waters prevailed upon the earth 150 days. So it rained 40 days, and every high hill was covered, and then 150 days, and the water was still there. The water prevailed upon the earth all that time. And God fulfilled his word. And you know, we can count on that. Did you know God judged the earth once, and he promised, well, maybe we won't get into it too much. We'll see it next time. He made some promises after this happened. But, you know, he's going to judge the earth again. He's going to judge the earth with fire next time. But did you know that if we trust in him, if we believe in Jesus Christ, just like Noah and his family were shut in the ark, that we are shut in Jesus Christ if we believe him. And just like Noah was lifted above the earth in the ark, he was lifted above the judgment, God will keep us above the judgment, and we won't have to be in the fiery judgment when he judges the earth with fire. But that's all I've got for you kiddos today, so you can head back to your seat. You were good. Good job, kids. Good listening.